Ian, we love our video game preservation news, don't we?
We sure do. And
It's a bread and butter of the CU podcast.
a big one came out. A big one happened this weekend. The story behind it is really what I think the most impressive part of it. But a Days of Thunder, I don't even know if you want to say prototype, but basically a working Days of Thunder game that is not the one that was released.
A separate game.
Yeah, was found in a practically complete form, assembled and released. So, late programmer and designer Chris Oberth left a bunch of materials behind that people are going through.
That he had worked on or been a part of?
That people are going through trying to preserve and find stuff on there. Basically, there was a mention of a game in there. It was a disc labeled Nintendo Hot Rod Taxi Final. The disc that came from it was a playable early proof of concept of what would end up being that version of Days of Thunder.
It was just an early proof of concept that this was just a little car program.
So the team located a 21. This is from the Ars Technica recap. Team located a 21 disc archive of a single hard drive.
5 1/4, baby.
All 21 discs could be read, amazingly. And the first attempt pulled up a file directory with hints of Days of Thunder. They ended up having to use an era-appropriate computer to load the PC Tools program.
I hadn't heard the name PC Tools forever.
Natively in MS-DOS, and then they had to extract all the files from the backup to find the data. They didn't find a ROM. They found the actual source code, which they had to compile to be able to run.
And then separately, it was like the art was separate.
They were missing an art file. So basically, they initially had they had the game, all the code, but they didn't have the art file. The quote is, "I extracted every archive in every known format in every one of the drive backups, and I did the same for every other disk image that we'd managed to recover. I ran one more search over the whole thing, and there was a single hit on a 128 kilobyte binary file." Oh, yes.
That they thought would fit.
Yep, and that ended up being the graphics.
Then they could compile it and create the ROM.
Yes. So that's a very simplified version of the story, but it's kind of crazy. They had to actually... backup it's how would you explain computer backup? It's not like just a set of disks that have all of these files on them that you can go looking for. It's actually like an image. It's basically a disk image of an old hard drive. So you actually have to pull that off and put it onto something, I believe, to go through it. So the game itself is very different.
What's interesting about this is that, like, it's not common where you think about, all right, we have a bunch of released NES games, but here's an entirely different version of one that no one knew about before.
That the more I'm reading it, maybe it is final. It certainly was very, very close to finished, if not 100% finished at this point. And the different one, the Days of Thunder that ended up being put out by, was it Konami, I think?
Oh God, I should know that. I think it was Beam Software did the development on it. I'll look it up.
I'm just trying. I think it was
Mindscape.
It says Mindscape. Yeah, it is Mindscape.
Because I was thinking of the white box and the almost Mindscape.
My bad. It is Mindscape.
Yeah.
That was the same publisher. Yeah, it is. So Mindscape put out a completely different game 1 year after, same publisher when this one was done.
It was Beam Software. Got it.
So this version has like a pseudo 3D qualifying lap. And then the actual game itself is kind of an adorable...
I love it.
Side-scrolling racing game.
Because the release Days of Thunder is an interesting, weird... You see the dashboard, but also see your car in third person, which I can't stand why they do both. So when you're first playing it, you're like, what's going on? Oh, you see your car doing it. And it's difficult, and it's more of a sim, obviously. This looks more like an adorable almost like sort of arcade action, like 2D going along sort of racing game. Like it's a lot simpler, but there's a cool little pit stop mini game, and you can obviously upgrade and repair your cars. I watched the gameplay. I'm like, this looks like if this had come out instead, this would appeal to a lot more, I think, gamers than just straight like sort of NASCAR or stock car, fans. That's the first thing I thought.
Sure. That's
a game that we'd play like on the NES Marathon. I ain't playing Days of Thunder, like the one that came out. Ever.
Right.
It's just too much for me. They already updated the Wikipedia for the actual Days of Thunder game. They said prior to the version developed by Beam Software, a version of the game was in development at Mindscape by Chris Oberth. At some point, Oberth's version was canceled and the work transferred to Beam Software. And it already tells you about the recovery effort. That's pretty cool. It's already on there.
Yeah.
So I just think it's interesting that how many other developers you think are out there that have projects like this that we don't know about, because they don't either care about it. Whatever. I worked on it when I was like 25 years ago. It's not important. Like they don't think it's important, but we love this stuff.
I've kind of said it before, but I'll say it again. I don't think we're running out of these things to find. I think there's only going to be more, which is exciting. I think we're in an era where I think this could be like the golden era for finding lost projects from that time frame.
I just think it's interesting that, like, let's see, he passed away in 2012. Even before that, you don't think someone was like, yeah, I got something laying around. Maybe you guys take a look at it. I guess now it wasn't seen as an important, because 10 years later, it's like now with game preservation being seen as so much bigger, people realize, oh, that thing I worked on, oh, that's important to some people now. I'll go get it. And maybe, hopefully we're getting to that point where more of the stuff is coming out. I mean, the UWC wrestling game we just talked about in the past, 6-7 months. And that game was just about finished.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting times. Game preservation. And oh, by the way, there's a limited amount of carts and boxes and
that they're
manuals
going to be putting together.
Yes.
That are going, and the proceeds are going to his family.
But the ROM will be made available later on.